What's up guys, today we are going to be discussing how can you create an array of objects using pointers. So in the previous video I told you guys about I didn't create an array of objects, I just created a single object and then I passed the address of that object to a pointer variable. But today I'm going to show you how you can create an array of objects and then put the value inside objects, or access every object inside that inside the array of those objects using a loop. And there are two ways you're going to access the functions of those objects inside the class, so I'm just going to do that. So first of all I'm going to using namespace std. Yep. And then I'm going to actually create a class of, let's say, student, and then inside the student class, let's say I declare a variable that is int roll number. Int roll number is my variable, and then I'm going to create a function that will or I'll just create a constructor that is student that will be a default constructor, and it's going to set the value of, no, actually it's not going to be a default constructor, it's going to be a parametric constructor, and it's going to set the value of roll number to R. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to display the roll number using the display function. Display, and it's not going to have any parameters inside, it's just going to output the okay, I also have to mention the return type of displays, that will be void. And then inside this function I'm going to see out roll number, and it's going to be roll number. Just like that. And then what I want to do inside my main function is I want to declare an array of pointers array of objects using my pointer variable. So I'm going to do so my class or my data type will be a student, and then I'm going to declare a pointer variable that is going to be ptr, for example. So I'm going to do this on different lines so you guys can better understand what's going on. So ptr equals, and I'm going to use new operator, or I could just simply do it like this, just I could just declare the array in normal fashion, just like that. But using pointer, the main reason why I want to use pointers here, because we want to dynamically allocate memory for my objects, for my array of objects. So because it might be the case that during the runtime of a program you might want the user to enter how many objects the user wants. So that is why I'm going to use a new, and then the return type student, or the data type student, and then the number of objects I want. So I will, let's say I want 5 objects or 4 objects, and I'm using, oh, why is it giving me error? Alright, so here in this case you cannot use a constructor, you cannot use a parametric constructor when you declare an array of objects. You will have to use a default constructor, because it won't work with a parametric constructor, because you will have to explicitly initialize every object inside an array, as I have discussed in a previous video. that you'll have to explicitly in an array notation, in a braces notation, you'll have to initialize explicitly every object. So that's why we are not going to use parametric construct a parametric constructor. It's actually the the default constructor is going to be executed uh, in this case, and that is already inside the class, but it won't show. So what you're going to do is we're going to make a function instead of making a constructor. So um, there will be set, or you can say set roll number, set roll number, and then I'm going to give it a parameter, and actually it's going to be void, and it's going to set my roll number to R, and then so this is going to work because because right now we are going to be using a default constructor, not a parametric constructor, so it won't give me any error. Alright, so now here you have two options. Either you will have to access every object in an array notation like this, so ptr0 ptr0 dot, let's say, dot set roll number, and let's say I put 4. So this, oh, okay, so I'll have to make it public as well, because it won't work as, it won't be accessed, it cannot be accessed outside the class if it's not public. If it's private, it cannot be accessed outside the class. So here now it's going to work for my first object, that has the location of 0. But I want 4 objects. I want to make 4 objects, and I want to access every object. So for that I'll have to use a for loop. So for int I equals 0, and when I is less than, or actually less than 4, because it's starting from 0, so I plus plus. And then, so here you have two choices. Either you can use the array notation, so for example I do like this, so ptr I equals ptr I dot set, so I call this function every time my statement will be executed, and let's say I do it I plus 1. So my the roll number is going to be different every time the statement is going to be executed, because I will be incremented, and just like this. And then after this I'm going to call the display function, so I can see the roll numbers in each object. So dot display, just like that. So now if I run the program, I'll be able to see that for every object, the 4 objects will be created, and for every object roll number is different. That is, it starts from 1 and it ends at 4, because I made 4 objects here. So here also you have another option to call these functions, and that is you use the arrow notation, as I have discussed before. But for that, here if I leave it just like that, the pointer is not being incremented. So how is it going to, and also you have to remove the dot. The pointer is not being incremented, so how are you going to access every object? It's just going to access the first object, and then it's going to terminate. It's going to just change the value of the first object, because pointer is not being incremented. And so to increment the value of pointer and to change the object, I'll have to increment the pointer as well here. So now it's going to work the same way, except the fact that I used 3 steps instead of using 2 steps, and 2 steps are more efficient, I think. So I personally would like to go with the 2-step form rather than using this one. So you can do either one, so it's up to you. So that was how you can make an array of objects using pointers, and how you can dynamically allocate memory for objects using pointer variable, and how you can use the loop, and you have different choices to access the member functions of each object. So alright, this was it for today's video, and I'll be making new videos about programming, so stay tuned for that.